I am about to walk into one of my favorite poker rooms in all the land, the Lodge Poker Room in Round Rock, Texas. And while I'm walking in there, I thought it'd be a good time to kind of update you guys. First of all, I hope you guys had an incredible Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. It was nice to take a break because my schedule was crazy. I actually had an amazing time at the WPT Win event where I got to play in the $10,000 main event. I also got a chance to be on the Solve for Why Only Friends podcast, so make sure to check that out. The link will be below. But the highlight for me was commentating on the ladies cash game and also the ladies championship $1,100 buy-in tournament. I got to commentate. It was so fun, and it was honestly an opportunity of a lifetime. All right, let's head into the lodge. We're gonna play some 1-3 1,000 max buy-in. I'll see you guys in there. All right, it's time to jump into some 1-3 1,000 max buy-in here at the Lodge Poker Room in Round Rock, Texas. This game is not match to stack anymore, so we'll just be in for $1,000. And one of the very first hands we get involved with, there is a straddle to $6 under the gun. There's a limper in early position, and now I'm on the button with ace deuce offsuit. This is not a very good hand at all, but with all this dead money out there, let's try to attack this and see if we can win the hand post flop. I raised to $25. A great result as only the small blind calls, so we're gonna go heads up to a flop of 9-9-4 with 2 hearts. He checks, and now this is a board that we can down bet for a small sizing with most of our range. I bet $20. He makes the call. The turn is an offsuit 5, and now we pick up a gut shot. He checks again. My opponent's gonna have possibly some smaller pocket pairs and some suited and offsuit Broadway cards, so we wanna try and get those to fold on the turn, as well as deny equity from flush draws. It's gonna be really hard for my opponent to continue to a lot of aggression on this type of board texture. Even flush draws don't love to continue as the board is paired. Now when we pick up gut shot equity on this turn card, we're showing up here with one of our absolute worst ace highs, so now this is a great hand to turn into a bluff, so I bet a little bit bigger and go for $60. My opponent doesn't think very long before putting in the fold, so we win our first hand of the session. I fold for quite a while, and then in this hand there's a $6 straddle under the gun 1, then raises to $20. I'm next to act and look down at blackjacks. As you can see, this hand could go either way between a call and a 3-bet. It's nice to sometimes protect some of your stronger pocket pairs with a flat here, but with the straddle and the nature of these 1-3 games being generally looser pre-flop, I'm gonna put in the 3-bet and try to isolate my opponent with a hand like jacks. So I put in the 3-bet to $70. We don't need to go too big here, and without the straddle I would have made it 60 flat, but with the straddle on, I decided to make it a little bit bigger. Only the under the gun razor calls, so we're going heads up to a flop of ace, queen, 7 rainbow. The dreaded overcards come. My opponent checks. Because I just sat down and don't know anything about my opponent, we are not going to exploit or deviate from baseline strategy because we don't have information to exploit just yet. So in this case, we're going to do what the solver says, and being in position here, we can bet about a quarter pot. So the pot is around $150 with the blinds and the straddle in there, so we're going to bet $45. My opponent doesn't think very long before putting in the fold, and we take down the pot even when the dreaded overcards come, and that's the beauty of being in position. If we were out of position, this is a flop that we would have to check a ton of the time. So it's important to note your bet sizes depend on if you're in or out of position, and of course the board texture. In this hand, there's a $6 straddle, and under the gun 1 raises to $25. Next to act makes the call for $25, and then it folds to me on the button, and I look down at pocket jacks. So we just talked about this, but as you can see, jacks can mix between a 3-bet or a call. Since I have the button, I elected to make the call this time, although sometimes I will put in the 3-bet. We go 3 ways to a flop of 7 deuce 5 with 2 clubs, a pretty great flop for my hand, and it is well disguised. Under the gun razor checks, next to act checks, and now it's on me, and I have to put in a bet here, of course, to protect my hand. Being multi-way, we don't want to bet too big. I choose the sizing of $45. Both players call, and when both players call, I think that under the gun has a lot of high Broadway cards, maybe a lot of ace-king suited and offsuit varieties, as well as ace-queen, maybe even a hand like ace-jack, and next act is more likely to have a draw like a straight draw or flush draw. He's also going to have some suited aces, and of course pocket pairs like 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. So we are definitely going to proceed with caution depending on what the turn card is. The turn is the 3 of hearts, so it does complete some straight draws. However, if the early position player had a hand like a set or 2 pair, I think we would have heard from him on the flop a ton of the time.
Now the under the gun original razor checks, and now it's on the player to his left, and he decides to lead for $65. I'm not loving this because most players when they lead in these spots just have a hand that they're scared will check through, although this is a pretty relatively small bet. So in this case, I think the best play is to make the call. I could put in a raise some of the time, but I elected to make the call. The under the gun player now folds, as I'm sure he probably had a hand like ace king or ace queen. So now we're headed to a river card, which is the 5 of hearts. It's not the worst card in the world, as we are still ahead of all missed flush draws and pocket pairs like 8s, 9s, and 10s. My opponent now leads for $75. Again, this is a pretty small bet. I think I can raise for value some of the time, but I'm just not sure where I am in the hand, and I didn't want to level myself considering the fact that I did flat a very strong hand pre-flop on the button. So I flick in the call, and my opponent has 6-4 of hearts and just drilled the straight on the turn. I know, a lot of you are gonna say, Ashley, if you just would have 3-bet pre-flop, he wouldn't have been in there. Well, I hate to break it to you, but this guy was calling 3-bets with pretty much any hand, so I actually probably would have lost a lot more. However, we cannot be results oriented. The fact of the matter is, he had 6-4 and I had pocket jacks, and if we were to run this hand 10,000 times, well, I'm printing money in this spot. So a little bit unfortunate, but part of poker is getting outdrawn, and we will live to see another hand. In my first PLO double board bomb pot of the day, I get dealt a hand where I flop top set with 2 10s in my hand. One other player and I chopped this pot up, but we did accumulate some bets from other players in the hand, so now I'm in the game for $1,000 and my stack is up to $1,145 for a mid-session profit of about $145. So this hand was very interesting, and to make it even more interesting, I somehow did not hit record or accidentally stopped the recording, so I didn't get all this on footage, and I really wish I would have. So what happened was, there's a $6 straddle and I'm in early position, it folds to me and I have ace king offsuit. I raised to $20. The player in the small blind, who's a very competent player and knows what he's doing, he 3-bets to $80. Now, I thought it folded all the way back around to me. I forgot the straddler still had cards, so before he could act, I acted out of turn and put in the 4-bet to 210 out of turn. So now I pull my bet back to see what the straddler would do, and it was clear that he had a decision on his hands because he was not folding. So to my surprise, he actually puts in a 4-bet to $230, and he has about $400 left in his stack. Now I've really made this interesting. Now it's on me, and I'm not sure what to do, but I do know the small blind can have some non-nutted hands in his 3-betting range. He can have a ton of Broadway hands, some smaller pocket pairs like maybe jacks or 10s, so I decide to 5-bet rip and hope to get the small blind to fold so I can go heads up against the straddler. Sure enough, the small blind begrudgingly folds pocket jacks, and so I'm heads up against the straddler, all in for a pretty decent pot. He asks how many times I want to run it, and I tell him let's just go once. So we run it out, we're all in, and here's what happened.
How many times? Once?
Yeah. Alright, that's no fun.
We're rolling. Damn it.
So a little bit anticlimactic, but we don't lose our stack on this hand. Thankfully, I got the small blind to fold because he would have scooped this pot, and we chop up the small blind's money and live to see another day. In this hand, I look down at King Jack of Diamonds under the gun. I raised to $15. Early position, middle position, cutoff, and the button calls, so we're going a million ways to a flop of Jack, Deuce, 4, Rainbow. We flop a great hand, but we are out of position against a lot of players. When you're multi-way in a hand, you have to remember that equities are distributed between all players, so even though we might be way ahead here, we have to dodge a lot of things by the turn and the river. And being out of position, we don't want to bet too big, we don't want to inflate the pot and put ourselves in a tough spot, so I bet $20. 2 of the players make the call, so now we're headed to a turn card, which is a 10 of hearts, so now it does bring in some draws like a heart draw and straight draws like Queen 9 and King Queen. So now being out of position when a draw comes in, yes, I can bet and deny equity, but all the draws aren't gonna fold unless I bet something massive, but my hand is just not good enough to polarize. It is just 1 pair, and the 10 isn't great because now a hand like Jack 10 just made 2 pair. So I check, and it checks around luckily. The river is another deuce, it's the deuce of clubs. This is a pretty safe card. We should have the best hand here a ton of the time, as I assume we would have heard from a better hand on the turn. So I'm gonna put in a value bet of $70. It folds to the button, and then he thinks for a little bit before sliding in the call. I show my hand, and we are good. In this hand, there's a raise from middle position, and the button calls, and then I look down at 10-9 offsuit in the big blind. Normally I fold this hand, but I flicked in the call. It's probably not the best call in the world, however, it seems great when the flop comes Jack 8-7 with 2 clubs, and we do have the 10 of clubs in our hand, and we flop the nuts. Unfortunately, the flop checks around, and the turn is the 3 of clubs. Even though the flush comes in, I can't let this one check through. We want to deny equity against better club draws, as well as get value from worse straight draws and some pairs, so I bet $25. Only middle position calls. We're headed to a river, which is the deuce of clubs, so now it is a 4-liner club flush out there. I check, he bets $40, and if he would have bet bigger, he definitely would have put me to the test, but for this sizing, I'm just gonna flick it in. We do have the 10 of clubs, so we only lose to the ace, king, or queen of clubs. He tables red pocket 4s, and we show our hand and scoop the pot. In this hand, the hijack raises to $20. I'm on the button and look down at pocket 7s. This is going to be a pure call. The small blind also calls, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of Jack 7-4 with 2 hearts, and we flop middle set. The hijack continues his aggression for $30. We're in a great position to put in a raise. We unblock all Jack X combinations, and we can get value from heart draws and overpairs. I raise to $85. I meant to go just slightly bigger, but $85 it is. The small blind folds, and now it's back on the original raiser. He puts in the call. The turn is the Jack of clubs, so now we have a full house. This card is great if our opponent has a hand like ace jack, king jack, queen jack, etc. So my opponent checks. We can still get called by heart draws. We're obviously going to get called by a jack. We can have some bluffs here. Some good bluffs would be a hand like 9-8 of hearts, maybe a7 of hearts, although that hand has a lot of equity it might want to realize. We could also be getting spicy with a hand like 10-8 of spades in this spot, so we definitely can have some bluffs. We don't just have to have the nuts. I have to decide on what bet size, so in thinking of what we can get called by, I think a hand like pocket queens, kings, or aces isn't gonna love it, but we'll probably have to peel one more card. We can get called by heart draws and obviously a jack, so I bet $130. He makes the call, and the river is the deuce of hearts, so now the flush comes in, and now with this board texture, I'm just praying my opponent has a piece of this and we're gonna get paid. He checks yet again. At the moment, I decided to size up, as jack is gonna have a hard time folding, and obviously if he makes a flush, we were probably just gonna be getting it in. However, he tanks and agonizes, and my opponent, who is a pretty good player, puts in the fold with pocket queens. Obviously, if I know he had queens, I might have played the hand slightly different. However, on the river, we're just trying to go for max value and hope to get called by a hand that I thought would connect with this board, but we don't know what our opponent has, so we have to try and make the best guesses we can with the information we're given. After that hand, I won one more hand with pocket kings in a very small pot post-flop, and now it was time to rack up. I was in the game for $1,000, cashed out with $1,625 for a profit of $625. And if you guys are wondering what I use to track all my poker stats, check out Poker Analytics. The link is on the screen and in the description. This app is so intuitive, easy to use, and it tracks every single stat you could possibly want when you're playing poker.
Okay, so after having 2 losing sessions in a row on the vlog, thankfully, we booked a win today, in for $1,000, out for $1,625 for a profit of $625. Great way to start this trip. Gonna play some tournaments and super excited to continue here in Round Rock, Texas.
After this session, it was time to grab some food. It's been a while since I put some food on the poker vlog, so here it is. This is one of my favorite restaurants in Austin. It's called Tiki Tatsuya. When you walk in, it looks like you're walking down into a cave or a jungle, and you're surrounded by volcanoes. There's light shows, smoke that comes out of your drinks. There's a bunch of amazing scenery to look at, and the food is incredible. One of my favorite things is the spam musubi, and the taro tots have got to be my favorite. I also got the poo-poo platter and the foie gras. It was incredible. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the vlog. I'll see you next time.
If you guys enjoyed the vlog, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. We're just getting started. It's only up from here. I'll see you guys next time.